have other commitments. We have a few other elected officials on, and I wanted to give them the opportunity to say a few words if they would like to do so. Senator Hansen, are you on?
I am. Yes, I'm here.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you. And I apologize. We have a caucus meeting starting at 7. So I had asked Eric if I could come on and give comments and hang out till just slightly before 7, and then I'll need to jump off. Eric is going to cover a lot of the COVID updates for you, so I'm not going to go too much into that. Eric, do you have an education update for COVID about that?
Educate? No, I don't think I
No?
do.
Okay, good. Because I had to contact, I had a question raised by a community that I'm going to, just one of my HOAs that I'm going to go to this weekend virtually. And they had asked about what's the status of education and COVID. And so I reached out to Dr. Bunting, Secretary Bunting from the Department of Education, and asked about that. And, you know, we got the new J&J, Johnson & Johnson vaccine that's out, along with Pfizer and Moderna. That's really incredibly helpful. At this point in time, out of our 15,500 or so educators, and that includes paraprofessionals, that includes bus drivers, everyone in that education realm that needs to be vaccinated, out of that 15,500 or so, already about 5,000 have been vaccinated. So they're doing really well, and that's coming together really well, and it's going to ramp up even more. So I asked her, well, then great, that's great. So we can get back to school, right? And she said, no, that the weak link this point in the chain is school buses and getting kids actually on buses to get to school under the CDC guidelines, because the CDC guidelines still requires 3 feet distance between the kids, even on the buses. So a bus that would normally hold 73 children or something like this is only able to hold 23. So until that guidance changes a little bit, there's still some problem opening up our schools to the extent that a lot of people would like them opened up for more in-person learning. So you'll start to see loosening, but there is that was a surprise to me. I hadn't thought about that, but that's where the log jam is right now. We're getting ready to go back into session now. We've been out for JFC for the last number of weeks. In that period of time, and just prior to that, I've been really busy working on a number of things. I'm the chair of the Energy and Environment Committee in the Senate. And so I've been working on a number of bills. One of them is a bill that we've just passed and the governor has just signed that I sponsored, and it increases the required percentage of renewables in the state's energy portfolio. This is really the method that the state uses to try to increase renewable energy usage in our state. So we've increased that from 30% to 40%. We also are looking at another piece of legislation right now that will make it easier for community solar to be actually part of, to occur better, more frequently and better in the state of Delaware. Along with this, I found when I really began to work in the kind of the energy field here, that we didn't have a particular like group of stakeholders that we could really talk to about the big energy issues and what's our energy plan, and should we be doing solar, should we be doing wind, I mean, all of that. So I have been putting together these large energy and climate forums. I've done 3 of them. One was on the renewable portfolio standard. Another one was on community solar, and the other one that I just had, the most recent one was on whether we should be doing more in offshore wind. And those have had, in like 2 cases, we've had almost 200 people register for those forums. The last one that we did in wind had slightly fewer people register, but we still had almost 150 people that attended that forum. So these are very good public conversations that we're able to have. And I think we're able to bring in a lot of people into the discussion about what we should be doing as a state with regard to energy. I also was just able to get past a bill regarding a ban on the sale of invasive species. That's another issue that I've been working on for a number of years. And what we found, actually what the University of Delaware found, And then we looked at that and analyzed it further with the Ecological Extinction Task Force, is that the bottom half of our food chain is sort of, it's beginning to I don't want to use the word collapse, but it's, we've lost 40% of our native birds, 40% of our native plants, 30% of our native reptiles and amphibians, 20% of our native fish. It's all of those. We're losing a tremendous amount of our ecosystem, our native ecosystem. And we found that the drivers of that: habitat loss, habitat fragmentation, climate change, and invasive species. So one of the first things that we did was put together a bill that I've sponsored, and it is now passed, that bans the sale of a number of different invasive species. And that's going to be updated as the science becomes clearer on what else should be part of that group too. So that's actually going to be signed by the governor at an environmental summit being put on by the Delaware Native Species Commission. And that will be on March the 17th. So if you want information on that, please just give me, I'll put my email address over in the chat, and you can send me information about that as well. I have also, you may remember last year I was able to get past the opiate impact fee bill. This is we have the one and only impact fee in the country that manufacturers have to pay on the sale of each and every one of their opiate pills in the state of Delaware. And that, it's usually about 4 cents a pill on generic oxycodone is like the generic, the most popular pill that we see. And that money goes to fund only substance abuse treatment and prevention. And we're bringing in about $500,000 every quarter. That money is going to the Department of Health and Social Services, who then lets out contracts, and has begun letting out the first series of contracts so that we can actually get that money spent and into the hands of people that need it. That's going to help with our bridge clinic, expand that to be 24 hours and helpful in all 3 counties. I have another bill right now that I've just introduced, and this was brought to my attention by a group called Attack Addiction, which is one of the large addiction recovery groups that we have in our state. And it will provide civil immunity from lawsuits for lay people that administer naloxone to someone who is overdosing. We found that to be a problem in many cases. Someone that's overdosing, there may be someone near them or a friend or a family member, but they don't know what to do. They're afraid that the liability associated with administering naloxone. So it would be a bill that it's called it expands our Good Samaritan bill that's already in place to make certain that it explicitly covers those that administer naloxone as a lay person. Eric and I have been very busy with DelDOT and DelDOT reports on a number of different nearby roadways. If you have an interest in some of the roadways that we've been taking a real hard look at, like Glasgow Avenue, like Frenchtown Road, Ironside and Welsh Tract Road, or Old County Road, just let either Eric or I know. We can send to you the DelDOT report. And for instance, in the case of Glasgow Avenue, the speed limit now has been reduced down to 30 miles an hour as a result of the study that was done. So at that, I'm just going to leave my comments at that point. I'll put my my email address in the chat and welcome any questions. You're on mute.
Mute yourself, please.
Thank you. God, I've heard that so many times lately. Thank you, Senator Hansen, for those updates. And for those of you who may not know, I share this district with Senator Hansen and Senator Nicole Poore. She could not make it tonight. She had a prior commitment, unfortunately. I know that we have Councilman David Tackett and Councilman Dave Carter on here from Newcastle County Council. I didn't know if either of you had anything to share quickly.
I'm happy to give you a quick update of we got a lot going on. I think the big one that's going to affect everyone, and Dave should feel free to fill it chime in on this one is that we are moving forward with redoing the property tax assessments. We will be putting we passed the resolution, and Tuesday night we will be passing the ordinance to fund it. We're going to put another 26 million there out of the reserve account. That means we'll do it fully revenue neutral right now. We're not going to raise the taxes that we can, that up to 15% first year. We're not going to do. Some people go up, some people go down, but the actual amount we collect in the county is going to be exactly the same. Okay, so we can't gain anything from this. It's just very expensive, but we're moving forward with it. Unclear yet whether we'll get all three counties to work together. It'd be nice to get us all doing it the same way. We're also in the ordinance passing at least for Newcastle County, to make ours a continuous 5-year rolling reassessment. And that'll go into the code on Tuesday night. The other thing that we've done is I've been working pretty hard looking at the American Rescue Act. Originally we were slated for about 109 million. I think now it's going to be about 106 million if it passes the end of the week in the US Senate. That comes to Newcastle County, and we passed a resolution that myself and Penrose Holland wrote to give us some guidance to make sure that we hit the communities most hard hit by the pandemic. Some of our lower income communities use this as a real good chance to do a boost there. All of you should be very in tune with the comprehensive planning efforts going on. I'm hoping we're going to see a major change in some of our zoning and other things. I have deep concerns, particularly with the communities I've worked with around Frenchtown Woods, from Brennan Estates all the way up to the Conservation District, about how much more development you can take with the drainage issues. And hopefully some of that we will look at changing zoning and maybe some down zoning because of the carrying capacity for drainage and things are passed. If any of you know any youth that are looking for a summer job, that have maybe from low-income families or lower-income families or struggling families right now, we're accepting people to our youth employment program. It's only open until tomorrow, so you'd have to move quick. I wish I'd gotten to you earlier. And if any of you want to know what we're doing at any time in council, we do, not only do we Zoom, but we live stream all of our meetings on a web link. And it's made so that you can archive them and you can go back and click on the agenda items and listen to that specific piece. A couple of quick things locally. There were some concerns off Old Country Road where we had some sewer issues and backup issues. I got confirmation. We've been working on this about a year since I learned about it. I know Steve Griffin had done some engineering. We were trying to figure out why we had backup of sewer into a couple of houses in Adams Run. Those manholes have now been repaired and raised. So at least that problem in that area has been addressed. And also I had some problems at the end of Countryside Lane where we had done a septic elimination program, and the houses at the end of that were having failures of the county sewer system. So we got that all fixed. So they're the big things. I can type links if you want any of the stuff on the legislation. For those that are interested, my contact number, and I apologize, Eric, that I'm going to have to jump off in a couple of minutes. And I don't know if Dave wanted to add anything to any of that or not.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Carter. So first off, Representative Morrison, thank you for hosting these town hall meetings. I am sure that the community is very appreciative of the fact to be able to get to engage you, as well as you inviting us to help get them the information back into their hands that they need in their communities. As Councilman Carter, covered quite a few things. We also have the senior tax exemptions deadlines are be coming up soon. So if you know any seniors who are over 65 or older, they very likely could be eligible for the county reduction in your property taxes, as well as the sewer. And then also if you're 65 or older, you are eligible for the reduction in the school taxes of the $400. Many might be aware that DSWA opened a new solid waste, the waste site in the Pencader Industrial Park back there. One day a week, they do a hazardous waste, collection, and all that can be found on the website. Newcastle County is moving ahead clearly with our COVID testing sites. We hope to turn those into, as the vaccines become readily available, into vaccine sites as we get into it. And then lastly, Newcastle County is hosting some scholarships from $1,000 to $3,000, and individuals have to apply for that. And we also have all that information. Councilman Carter and I have that information available on our websites. We've got it on the county link, and we can also disseminate that if anybody was looking for that information. And again, thank you, Representative Morrison and Senator Hansen, again for allowing us to join this evening.
Great. Thank you, everybody. And like Senator Hansen likes to say, we do work as a team. We are all here for you. We work in tandem. We keep each other updated. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to go ahead and launch into my part here. There's a lot to cover tonight. I'm going to talk a lot, but also, feel free to drop questions. I would say wait till at the end of each section, and then I'm happy to answer some questions for you. The first thing I really wanted to go over tonight, because I get so many questions about it, of course, is COVID, in particular the COVID-19 vaccine. So I'm going to go over quite a bit of information about that. Just for some stats, so far we have administered over 236,000 vaccines to Delawareans. Right now we're averaging 279 new cases per week. To date, 1,440 Delawareans, unfortunately, have died from the virus, which is about 11.2 out of 10,000 Delawareans. As of today, we have 135 virus-related hospitalizations, and right now, about 4.8% of Delawareans who get tested are positive for the virus, so about 1 out of 20. Now, as many of you know, right now for the vaccines, we're still in phase 1B. Phase 1B focuses on seniors 65 plus and also some frontline essential workers. And those workers include police, firefighters, teachers, child care providers, food processing workers, Department of Corrections employees, postal service workers, and also workers in public transit and grocery stores. However, with that being said, right now and likely for the next few weeks, the vaccines are really focused on seniors, educators, child care providers, and Department of Corrections staff. There are 200,000 Delawareans we're aiming to vaccinate in this phase. If everybody gets a second dose, which with Johnson & Johnson coming out, they won't need it, but still that means 400,000 doses. 200,000 Delawareans is over 20% of our population. So it's a lot of vaccinations to do. In coming weeks, other frontline essential workers should start hearing from their own employers about opportunities for vaccinations. Employers in the state are working together to roll out vaccinations for companies' individual employees. There's also a survey that employers should fill out if they haven't done so yet, so that they can work with the state to get their employees vaccinated. And if you need that survey for your employer, or if you are an employer, please let me know and I'm happy to provide that link to you. Talking about phase 1C, the next phase, that was originally scheduled to start March 1st, but it was postponed indefinitely. There's still no date for that. Phase 1C will include people 16 to 64 with high-risk medical conditions. And those will include obesity, diabetes, COPD, heart conditions, kidney issues, cancer, sickle cell, severe and persistent mental or behavioral health conditions, and intellectual and developmental disabilities. And phase 1C will also include smokers. Some legislators and I have been working to push DHSS and DPH to prioritize the caretakers of adults and children with disabilities in phase 1C. So we'll see how that goes. We're really trying to get those caretakers immunized as well. The biggest speed bump we've hit really with vaccinations is just the doses we're receiving. There have been some weeks where we've only received about 3,000 doses. And of course, when you're talking about needing potentially 400,000 doses, that's kind of a drop in the bucket. The good news is the number of doses we're seeing is really going up, and we expect that to continue to do so. I believe we're getting our first round of doses from Johnson & Johnson next week, so that's very exciting. Thank you to everyone for your patience. I know it's frustrating. I know everyone wants vaccines and everyone's worried about themselves and their elderly loved ones and their frontline essential workers. So thank you for your patience. I can assure you from being on calls every week that a lot of folks at DHSS and DPH in the governor's office, they're working virtually around the clock to get as many vaccines as we can in the arms of individuals. Um, for the mass vaccinations events, fellow legislators and I have been getting very glowing feedback. The initial ones definitely had some bugs, but we have ironed those out and we're getting a really good response. Something I'll say too is these mass vaccination events run largely on volunteers. So please reach out to me if you would like to volunteer at mass vaccination events. They have slots for people with no special expertise. They also have slots for current or former healthcare workers. So if you've worked in the healthcare field or you still do, please let me know. In terms of educators, right now, we are focused on K through 12 educators, daycare providers, and then also those Department of Correction employees. They should be getting information about vaccinations from their employers. And if they're not, they should talk to their employers about that. I know we recently had an event where I think they vaccinated, 2,500 folks who work in daycares, I believe it was. Something else to point out, the governor recently issued an order that if a healthcare provider gave you your first vaccine dose, they must also provide you your second vaccine dose, or they can face a serious fine. They also have to prioritize those second doses above the first doses. So if you got a first dose with a healthcare provider, they are due to give you your second shot. In terms of seniors getting vaccinated, there are different ways to do that. There's the mass vaccination events. Seniors can sign up online for that, or there's also a phone number to call. There are also the pharmacies, and there's a list of pharmacies out on the state website. You really should book through that and not through the individual pharmacies' websites. And I've heard of Good Luck, people having good luck logging on at midnight to try to get, a pharmacy appointment because that's when they're adding the new slots. I know that's a little late, but that is something that I've heard. Right now, we have 8 Delaware pharmacies participating. There are also some other local entities that are offering vaccines, such as Christiana Care. Something else to point out is please be aware of scams when it comes to COVID-19 vaccinations. They are out there. For example, one, they were calling folks, especially seniors, saying, hey, I'm with the state of Delaware. For $75, we can get you a vaccine. I assure you those are scams. If it sounds suspicious, it probably is. So please be aware of those and make your fellow loved ones, especially seniors, aware of those. There are a couple of websites that I'll drop in the chat here in a second that offer really good information and where you can keep updated. Delaware has, of course, the main coronavirus website, and then as part of that, the vaccination part of the website, and they're both very helpful. So I'll drop those in the chat in just a minute. Another thing I'll say is please rely on these websites and on communications from DHSS, DPH, the governor's office, and other elected officials for information about vaccines. Please do not rely on gossip or social media or what your neighbor tells you. I'm sure they're well-intentioned, but there's a lot of misinformation circulating. And that even extends, unfortunately, to some of the official media outlets like newspapers and TV stations. I know that all of us, I know I certainly do, give updates frequently on Facebook. I'm on Nextdoor. I have my email distribution list. So with Facebook, if you haven't already, please go like my official page, which is Rep. Eric Morrison. So lots of ways to get you updates there. The other thing I'll say is if you email me with questions about COVID, I will respond. I actually read every single email I get. My assistant does not read those. I do, so you will hear from me. And the final thing I'll say about COVID, I know I've said a lot, but just please remember, we're all in this together. And just because more and more Delawareans and Americans are becoming vaccinated, we can't let up and become complacent. So please still wear your masks, still practice social distancing, avoid large gatherings, don't host large gatherings, and please obey those other orders from the governor. So did anybody have any questions about anything related to COVID, especially related to vaccines?
I actually have a question here from someone that wrote in earlier today that did have a question about vaccines. They said, if you already registered to receive a vaccine at the state, what happens when you don't want the vaccine being offered at that time? Does the state recycle your name for the next cycle?
Yes. So if I understand the question correctly, if you are unable to make an appointment that they offer you, then yes, you will get offered another appointment. Yes, you will. You just go in, you refuse that appointment, but yes, you will get offered another appointment.
And yeah, Sean, you can ask questions in the chat if you feel more comfortable doing that. I am monitoring the chat right now, so if you don't feel comfortable doing that. Sean asks, why aren't there any measures for people who are high risk? It seems rather cold to have people who are high risk go to mass events. If it's scrapped, what protections would they have to get vaccinated?
Well, and there are more than I understand that concern, but there are more outlets other than the mass events. There are pharmacies, there are healthcare providers. Folks should be calling their PCPs and their specialists to ask them if they're offering the vaccines. There are also places like Christiana Care offering it. And I know that it's frustrating, and I know that, the method behind the madness, so to speak, it's not always clear cut. I mean, I understand some people might say, well, hey, why right now is a healthy 66-year-old getting vaccinated, but a 25-year-old with a heart condition is not? And I can understand that. What I will tell you is that DPH and DHSS and the governor are following federal guidelines in terms of the phases. We're very much in step with those. And it's not easy, and these are not easy decisions to make. They spend a lot of time behind, sitting in their offices together, determining who gets shots when. And I assure you, it's tough. It's tough decisions, but they are really doing, the best they can. But yes, there are those other alternatives besides the mass vaccinations.
And Sean is also asking if there are any vaccination events that are outdoors. And I believe, Rep. Morrison, correct me if I'm wrong, that most of them are outdoors. They are mostly in parking lots, right? Most of these mass vaccination events.
Yes, a lot of them are drive up. Yep. And that's why they tell you, like, hey, wear something. They've got people showing up sometimes with like coats and long sleeves and stuff. So show up, with something where you can roll your arm up and such. So yes, there are those opportunities. And again, I would really encourage people to reach out to their PCPs and their other healthcare providers to see if they can go right into their office and do that, or if they can get an appointment at a pharmacy, because certainly there will be, far fewer people there as well.
And I'm also seeing some questions. If someone is not familiar with how to use their computer proficiently, is there a number that they could call? I'm sure you don't know off the top of your head. I was actually just looking up on my computer. Is there a hotline that they can call to get information about the vaccine?
Yes, there is. For example, for the mass vaccinations, you can certainly sign up through the website, but there is also a phone number. And I don't know if you're able to find that.
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now. Actually, I think I
so
found it.
But if you want to, let me also drop my email in the chat. There we go. So if I don't answer your question tonight, feel free to email me. But yes, there's a phone number that folks can call if they do not have computer access or do not use a computer. Yes.
Yep, and I just put that in the chat. So that is the COVID hotline. So not only can they answer your questions about the vaccine, they can answer any other questions you might have about the virus.
Yep.
Okay.
And I did see one question, do we have a schedule on when Delaware will receive vaccines? And I assume you mean um, like how many we receive and which brand. It's really week to week. It really is. And that's a tough thing. And that's another challenge for the folks who are trying to plan the events, who are trying to plan out the phases. For example, there was something in the in the paper a while back that was misreported about what happened at an event. So sometimes we have more vaccines at events than we have people showing up. So instead of letting those vaccines go bad and throwing them in the trash, since they have to be kept at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time, if it's 3 hours, 2 hours left at the mass vaccination event, and you've got 1,000 doses left and only 100 people in line, we don't want to throw out 900 doses. So what they'll start doing is through social media and stuff, getting the word out in that community, and they may vaccinate some people. They may vaccinate a perfectly healthy 21-year-old, but it's better to do that than to throw out 900 doses of vaccines.
I have another question here that I got earlier today, and it's related to COVID. There is somebody asking about school reopenings and about your position on school reopenings, or I think that Senator Hansen touched on this earlier, but what's being done to get the kids back.
Let me say this first, and I don't mean this to be flippant whatsoever. In the end, what I think about school reopenings doesn't matter, because those decisions are made at the governor's level in consultation with the Department of Education. State legislators, for better or worse, to be frank, we have no say in any of that. We have no say per se in the planning for the vaccines. We do have meetings 2 or 3 times a week with different entities, DPH, DHSS, and even the governor. Believe me, we carry feedback, including feedback we hear about school reopenings, vaccination events, all of it. We carry very frank and candid feedback to them, I assure you, good and bad. So they do listen, they do get the feedback. In terms of the school reopenings, the governor made the decision to leave that up to the individual school districts. That was his decision and his decision only. I know that there are parents out there who want kids back in right away. There are parents who don't want their kids in at all. There are parents who like the hybrid model. Same goes for educators. You've got educators all over the board about it. So, my main focus really is to get information out to people about what is happening, on things that I don't make decisions on, and also to help people with what I can, such as helping people get their unemployment benefits that they're due, helping people get vaccines, helping people who've lost their jobs or have time off work, get them emergency food assistance, help with utility bills, help with rent, things like that. So that's really what I've been focused on.
All right, looks like another question just came through in the chat about the vaccines. Someone wants to know if we in Delaware will get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Yes, somebody just posted Walter posted that we're getting 8,000 doses very soon. I'm pretty sure that on this call we had this week that they said we were scheduled to get some, I thought this week, but it's been bumped up to next week. So those are coming, and that's very exciting because those are the one-shot vaccines. So that's very exciting because you're talking about cutting in half the number, that we will open.
Yeah, someone's asking to press for reopening here in the chat. Someone also has a comment about the vaccine process, and they said that they've already gotten the vaccine, but they've still been reached out to about getting the vaccine again. So I guess that's just more of a comment on the process. I don't see any other questions about COVID though. So unless anybody else has anything else to say.
I will say real quick in terms of the schools and kind of to address your question there, your concern, Walter, some things we are doing. So for example, we have worked with the Secretary of Education. I am on the Education Committee, and we've worked to ensure that teachers are not going to undergo their normal evaluation process this year. It's extremely lengthy, and it's very hard to do, especially virtually. But the main reason is because it takes a lot of hours, and instead we want those hours focused on teaching students, because there are, education gaps out there with the remote learning. So that's one thing we've been able to get through. We are also working, especially me and the wonderful chair of the Education Committee in the House, Kim Williams, with Secretary Bunting, to try to get it so that students will not be doing testing, or that they will be doing very limited testing this year. Because again, we really feel strongly, and I feel strongly as a former educator, that we can better use that time educating our students this year instead of testing them. So, all right. I'll go ahead and move on. Again, if you have questions, feel free to email me. But the next section I want to move on to is something Senator Hansen touched on, which are traffic and speed studies. I've had a number of these commissioned based on constituent feedback and requests. And basically a traffic or speed study is when we go to DelDOT and they go out there and they collect all kinds of information by various means. They look at past history of accidents, all kinds of things, past surveys, to see, hey, at this intersection or on this road, what can we do to make things better and safer? So I'll run through a few of these. There's quite a few. I won't spend a lot of time on them, hopefully. As Senator Hansen mentioned, the speed limit on Glasgow Avenue, because of a study we commissioned, just went down to 30. That happened this past Monday, I think. And also there will be signs being put out that limit trucks over 2 axles to local services only. Also, at the intersection of Del Laws Road and Carable Drive and Maple Lane, they looked at the feasibility of putting in an all-way stop, but in the last 3 years, there's actually only been one crash that was due to the angles there. So instead, what they are going to do, they're going to move the stop bar up a little bit. It should be further up so people stop further up and have a better line of view. They also are going to install an additional 40-mile-per-hour speed limit on the southbound Del Laws Road approach. On Old County Road, there are several studies that have been done and are being done. The speed limit is not going to be changed on Old County Road. That was not justified. They will be putting in truck weight restrictions for trucks over 2 axles. And for Old County Road at Fraser Road, the intersection is going to stay as an all-way stop. A traffic signal is not justified there, but they will be doing enhanced signage and striping. Departing Salem Woods to Salem Church Road, there are yellow skip lines there to delineate the exiting through lane departing Salem Woods to Salem Church Road. They were put in on February 4th, but due to weather and surface temperatures right now, those are just 3M reflective tape. The permanent ones will be put in as soon as the temperature and weather allows. I have a speed study going on Brennan Boulevard, which is the main road that goes into Brennan Estates. Unfortunately, it's been hampered by the weather. There are 8 studies ahead of this one, so we should have data from that study in about 4 to 8 weeks. There was also interest in putting a light at the T at Summit Bridge Road and Old County Road. They're working on an evaluation of crashes there to see if any immediate signage or striping improvements can be made, but they are anticipating that that intersection will actually turn into a roundabout with construction starting in fiscal year 2026. Finally, and this isn't our area, but it's huge, the I-95 Wilmington project, which is called Restore the Corridor, which I think is pretty cool. So this is actually Delaware's most ambitious ever road construction project. It's massive. I won't go into all of it, but if you have to travel to Wilmington, please keep updated on the website. I'm going to plop that in the chat. And at that site, you can sign up for email updates about the project, and you can also learn about virtual town halls for the project. I think they're doing a really good job in terms of keeping folks updated on that. The other thing I'll say, and then I'll take a few questions, is I've had a number of folks reach out to me lately saying, hey, we want traffic calming devices like speed bumps in our neighborhood. Please know that there is a process behind that, and I'm happy to work with you on that, but I wanted to tell you about the process. So first, you come up with a proposal in terms of, hey, I want 8 speed bumps along this road. And you don't have to necessarily do that yourself. We can work with DelDOT on deciding what the best thing would be. Then what happens is DelDOT sends ballots to each residency in the neighborhood asking for a yes or no vote on approving those speed bumps or other traffic calming devices so that everybody in the neighborhood gets a say. In order to move forward with what was requested, DelDOT has to receive back at least 15% of the ballots they mailed out, and there has to be at least a 2/3 positive vote. So there is that process in place to make sure that everybody has a voice. So just to make everyone aware of that, that is the process for trying to get traffic calming devices. So did anybody have any questions about all those updates?
Yeah, Eric, this is Paula. I have a question.
Mhm.
We've been trying to get speed bumps in Springwood for like a million years. And so we have a bunch of homeowners who don't live there. So it's renters. So when DelDOT sends out these little surveys, who do they send them to? The renters or the owners who don't live there?
And that's a very valid point because that is something that is an issue with this. The homeowners are the ones who should be filling those out. But is DelDOT really going to, go investigate who checked the box or what have you? They're not. And that is an issue. And that's, yeah. Another issue with this, frankly, and it's a shame, but for example, you might live at a place where the speeding happens a lot, but in the back part of the development, they don't see that. So a lot of times, to put it bluntly, they just don't care because they're not affected by it. And all they know is, I don't want to have to go over speed bumps every morning when I leave to go to work. They don't see the reason for it because they don't see the speeding. So, people really have to be advocates for this. If they want them in their neighborhood, go to their HOA, go to their neighbors, educate them about it. It can really be a process to convince people and to get the amount of vote that you need.
Okay, so just to clarify, and then I'll be done. So let's say we have 100 houses in Springwood. We only need 15% or 15 houses to send responses, and 2/3 of those have to say, yes, good idea.
Perfect.
Oh, that's great, because we thought that 67% of the entire neighborhood had to say yes.
No.
Excellent. I think we could do this.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, we actually have another question from Jacqueline, whose speaker is not working, but she posted in the chat. What about at least getting speed limit signs posted on Old County Road? There was only one at Fraser Road.
That is something that and you said on Old County Road, correct?
Yep, that's what she said. Posted on Old County Road.
I will reach out to DelDOT and I will ask them to look into that. Again, they do have, they have all kinds of things to consider and federal guidelines and all those things, their own guidelines in all of these things. So I'm sure they have rules about how often you have to have speed limit signs, but yes, I will ask them if that is possible.
She said she's talking about the Glasgow Avenue end.
Okay.
So there used to be one at Glasgow end, but there's no longer one.
Okay, thank you. Yep, I will ask about that. All right, anybody else?
I have a question for topic.
What did you say on a different topic?
Yes,
Okay, well, actually, if you don't mind holding that to the end, we'll do that.
of course.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll move on. Those were pretty lengthy topics. The next ones are a little bit shorter. Some of you may be aware of this, and I won't spend too much time on it, but there is the Ignition 360 Church, which for about 4 years now has been operating out of a private home in the Bay Point community. For months now, I have been working to try to get that stopped. It was originally brought to me by multiple residents of Bay Point because of COVID concerns, which I understood. I made an in-person visit there to a service. I got there, and this is a lot of it was in the news, so you may have seen it, but essentially I got there very late so that I was able to social distance. No one was wearing masks. They were packed in like sardines in there. They even joked when I walked in late if I was the health inspector. Unfortunately, the state is not going to pursue anything in terms of the COVID angle, mainly because in the history of the state, going to businesses or homes or residents or churches about not following COVID orders, this is the only facility that has ever refused to let them in. So, you get to a point where what do you do? Do you do search warrants? Do you do battering ram? But the other thing is that is strictly against Newcastle County code. In Newcastle County, you cannot run a church or a business out of your home. I mean, imagine if tomorrow 3 restaurants opened up out of homes on your street and all the problems that would cause. So I've been working very hard with the county. I am pleased to say, and many kudos to Karen Hartley Nagel and especially to Matt Meyer. Last Monday, the church was issued a county code violation. They have 30 days to respond to that. It could go a few ways. If they choose not to respond at all, a hearing will be scheduled with them. They may choose, and they do have legal representation, they may choose a lawsuit. The county is prepared for that as well. But I just wanted to give everybody an update on what's going on with that. And please stay tuned. There will be more to come, but it is something I intend to see through. Another thing I've been working on, of course, lots of constituent issues. I won't go into all of it, everything from potholes to ditches to road conditions. A lot of it's COVID related, helping people get the emergency food assistance, get signed up for Medicaid, utility bills, rental help, mortgage help. A lot of it is the unemployment because you do get those quirky situations and people aren't getting their benefits. So very happy to help all of those people and to help anyone at any time with anything, really. I do want to give some legislative updates. So, and Senator Hansen mentioned some of this, but a lot of people don't understand how the legislature works. I certainly didn't, not that long ago. So we are in session 6 months out of the year, but we're not in session every day of those 6 months. So we were in session January 12th through 28th on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. We were not in session in February, except for those folks who are on the Joint Finance Committee. So the governor has released his recommended budget, and the Joint Finance Committee meets with all kinds of different groups, nonprofits, individuals who are basically asking for changes to the budget or asking for money for something. So that's what the Joint Finance Committee has been doing for all of February. We are back in session starting next week. On Mondays, we will have our Democratic House caucus meetings. Then we will have committee meetings and hearings on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And then we will have full House sessions on Thursdays. Something I'd like to remind people of is you can attend our committee hearings and speak for up to 2 minutes on why you do or don't support a piece of legislation. I may be wrong here, and Genevieve can correct me, but I think we're the only state out of 50 that allows that. Are we not? Or is...
I'm actually not sure about that, but I know it is really accessible and it is on our legislative website. You can go click and you'll be signed up to attend the committee meeting. Even if you just want to listen, you don't want to give comment.
Yeah. I think all of them, or at least most of the other state legislatures, they don't even allow the public in to the facility. Not that we're in the facility now. So we're very lucky in Delaware for that. My official state representative page is up, which is very exciting. I am going to drop that link. one of the things, you can go read about my life. It's not all that exciting, I assure you. But one of the really neat things that you can do is, this is kept updated very well, is down at the bottom. You can go track legislation that I'm co-sponsoring or prime sponsoring. As of today, I am either a co-prime sponsor or a co-sponsor for 53 pieces of legislation. Also, as of this week, I'm thrilled to say, last week actually, House lawyers are writing my first 2 pieces of legislation based on policy proposals I've submitted. Basically, you submit a policy proposal, has a lot of research and stuff behind it, and then the lawyers actually write it in the code. Now, the 2 that I've written, I won't get into, but they're heavy lift bills. You know, I didn't go down to Dover to do easy things. I went down to Dover to do big things. So these are 2 very heavy lift bills. So they should be written hopefully by the end of March. Another thing I've been doing is working hard and doing a lot of research and working with bill sponsors and co-sponsors to make what I think are improvements on forthcoming legislation or existing legislation. So I have been involved heavily with the minimum wage bills. There will be more to come on that. Got some good changes, I think, done on those. Also working on the cannabis legalization bill to make sure it considers the very real fact that historically, people of color and of a lower socioeconomic status, but particularly people of color, have been victimized by our archaic cannabis laws. So in terms of, for example, who should get first shot and who should get breaks in terms of opening cannabis shops, it should be those folks first. Also, I am working to, Senator Hansen talked about how we are at 2035 going to bump up our renewable portfolio standard, the amount of energy that Delaware has to get from renewable resources to 40%. I am fighting hard to get that to 50%. So more to come on that. A few specific bills I wanted to call out. I co-sponsored legislation that was signed by the governor so that Delawareans who received unemployment benefits in 2020 will not have to pay Delaware state income tax on that money. That includes the federal benefits. That's so important because in Delaware, you have the option to have federal taxes held out of your unemployment, but not state taxes. So when you get unemployment, you get hit with a surprise tax bill essentially the next year. We did not want that happening to people who have already suffered so much financially under COVID. So we were happy to get that through. I am also co-sponsoring legislation to restore the amount of the senior school property tax credit from $400 to $500. That is something I talked a lot about in my campaign, and it's something I'm working hard along with other legislators to make happen. I'm also co-sponsoring legislation to make it so that fully disabled Delaware veterans are exempt from property and school taxes. A lot of other states do that, and it's long overdue that we do that for our veterans here in Delaware. The other thing I'll say about legislation is, kind of per my passions and also per my committee assignments, the legislation I'm working on now is largely focused on education, healthcare, improving life for everyday workers, criminal justice reform, and also protections for members of the LGBTQ plus community, other minorities, and women. So those are really kind of my priorities right now in terms of topics. So did anybody have any questions or comments about anything I talked about or any other legislation in general?
Looks like Nancy's trying to talk, but it looks like she might be muted. So let me unmute her. Oh, Nancy, you're still muted.
I'm unmuted now, I think.
Yep, there you go. You're on.
Okay. Representative Morrison, I wanted to introduce myself to you because I've written to you several times. I wanted to talk about criminal justice reform and legislation. We had written to you several times about legislation with the robbery and the carjacking The legislature several years ago had said that carjacking is no longer an offense. It is essentially robbery, and it's the same thing. And I want to talk to you about an individual who was charged with robbery and carjacking.
Yeah,
I
and that, Nancy, I'm sorry, if I can stop you, yes, I did get your emails. Can we take this offline though, because it's an individual case?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I really wanted to make sure you saw my face and could put a name to my face. And I think I wrote to you and asked you if we could have a conference call on this.
Yes, so I will shoot you an
Fine.
email, but yes,
Yes, I just wanted us to
yes.
face here.
It
Thank
is
you
nice
very
to put
much.
it is nice to put a face with a name, especially
Yes.
today when we're all stuck in our homes. So yes.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Uh-huh.
What's the cost to our electric cost if we decide to increase the ratio of renewable energy?
And that's a very good question. So we did already do this once. We bumped up to, I believe it was, I'm trying to remember. We did this RPS once to get up to where we are today. It upped folks' electric bills essentially overall by a few bucks per month, but it went down steadily and has been going down to, I think now it's about between $1 and $2, because what tends to happen is it's a little bit higher in the beginning, but we're basing all of this on what we think renewable energy will be in the future, because renewable energy costs are going down significantly, and the costs of traditional energy, whether you're talking about coal, oil, what have you, fossil fuels, keeps going up. So there are actually, and I've been working with the Office of the Public Advocate and also Delmarva Power, because I do want those numbers for the 50%. They are working on those right now for me, and they should have those soon. In terms of the 40%, again, they're predicting that it will start out at just a few bucks per month. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think it's something like $3 to $4 per month. But again, it does go down as we get closer to that goal, because we're relying more and more on renewable resources. We also, frankly, have had some bad contracts that are about to expire. Thankfully, that is going to help us out tremendously. And a lot of it had nothing to do with people signing bad contracts, knowing they were bad contracts. It's another story. But I hope that does answer your question a little bit.
We have another question about renewables here in the chat. Someone's asking what the current reliability of renewable energy is to maintain the demands of power, the power grid.
Yeah, and that's something that is definitely taken into consideration. I mean, we're not going to go willy-nilly saying, hey, let's hit 50%, but we don't have enough energy. That will not happen at all. And this is incredibly complicated. I've sat down with some folks like the office of Drew Slater at the Office of the Public Advocate, also some folks from the Sierra Club. It's very, very complicated. And I'm not going to pretend I understand everything about it, at least not yet. But there are credits that energy producers are buying back. It's very complicated. But if your question is, kind of, are we going to get to a point where we're just going to go hog wild to 50% and then not have enough energy? That's not going to happen.
And then we have another question here about marijuana legalization. Sean is asking if there are any measures to reduce medical marijuana prices. He says he's disabled, he's the only source of income, and he's looking for information about that.
And that's a good question. I'll be honest, nobody has per se brought that up to me before. I do believe, and this is known, that, when we legalize cannabis, and it will happen, it's a matter of time. I mean, we're seeing it all over now. I am very hopeful that it's going to happen this session. It's long overdue. I won't get on that soapbox. But once we legalize cannabis, we will see a lot more dispensaries. We will see a lot more dispensaries who are owned by people who look a lot different, shall we say. We are going to see a lot more truly small business dispensaries. You're going to have a lot more competition out there, and that alone will bring down the prices.
Someone is asking about the Bloom Energy contracts. They said that they've been paying plus or minus $10 a month for their fuel cells. So when does that expire?
That I honestly don't know. I would have to look into that. We were talking about Bloom Energy on a call recently with legislators, and the Bloom Energy was a fiasco. It was gone into with the best intentions, but that was a fiasco. I, of course, was not in office then. It looked like a good idea at the time, but the Bloom Energy situation, please be aware, is extremely different for so many reasons, from what we are doing now in terms of the renewable portfolio standards.
Gabrielle's asking how they can access or participate in the Power Energy Committee.
The Power Energy Committee, I'll be honest, I'm not aware of such a committee. I don't know. I have never heard of that committee. Is that what is?
I'm not sure either. That just reading it off the chat here.
I would say, again, I'll put my email here. If you want to shoot me an email, I can definitely look into that for you. I did see too, somebody asked, I think specifically what area of women's safety and protection that I'm interested in. All. Say one thing, I am a very outspoken supporter of a woman's right to choose. I absolutely will fight tooth and nail against any efforts to take away or to erode that right. One piece of legislation that is rearing its ugly head again this year, sponsored by some downstate, very conservative Republicans, is a piece of legislation that would require abortion providers to offer women having an abortion the option to look at their ultrasound. That's an option they have anyway. But what this bill really intends to do is to try to shame women out of having the abortion. It's really cruel. It's very unnecessary. The public, facing thing is, hey, give women this choice to look at the ultrasound. I can assure you that that's not the reason for it. It is an attempt to shame women out of having an abortion. So that certainly is very important to me. Of course, also equal pay. We did get the ERA in. We're looking to expand that to other groups as well. So I hope that answers your question.
I also got a few questions in today about various voting issues. There's two different ones, but they're kind of the same. The first is, what efforts are you going to take to have the voting process more secure? They list examples: ID, proof of existing residence, mail-in voting. And then there was another one that says, how do you stand regarding election voting and the potential for fraud with mail-in ballots?
Thank you. And I do get emails about that, a fair amount. The simple fact is that mail-in voting is extremely secure. There are a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of misinformation put out there. Mail-in voting is extremely insecure. I find it ironic that, a lot of the folks who are, critical, elected officials who are critical of mail-in ballots do mail-in ballots themselves. But we know from empirical evidence, we know that mail-in ballots are very safe. Some things I am working on, I am a co-prime sponsor on the bill that would allow for same-day voter registration, so folks can walk into a voting polling place and register and vote right there. Again, extremely secure. There are not issues with it. It's been done in numerous other states, and there have been no significant issues with it whatsoever. Voter fraud is extremely, extremely rare in America. It is nowhere near what it would take to have any kind of actual impact on the results of elections. We really do have a very good system in America and in Delaware. And in Delaware now, of course, we have our quite new voting machines that even do the paper tracker. So you can see on paper, and there's a paper receipt of how you voted. So I feel very confident about mail-in voting and about the security of our elections. But I'm also passionate about making sure as many people can vote as possible. And I have a couple of pieces of legislation I'm working on there to make sure that as many people can vote as possible.
And I see that Representative Bomback has entered our town hall here. So hi, Representative Bomback. We have a question in the chat. Sean asks, if marijuana is legalized, will Medicaid be able to cover medical marijuana with prescription coverage?
Good question. Not to my knowledge, but that is something that, although I haven't looked into it a lot, I have thought about. I think it absolutely should be. I actually worked in Medicaid for 13 years, and I fully believe that medical marijuana should be covered by Medicaid and should be covered by insurance companies. It is a medical treatment, and frankly, it is a lot less costly than a lot of other treatments, not just financially, but socially. When you're talking about, hey, would you like to take these pain pills and face possible addiction to these pain pills, which can cause so many issues? Or would you, and then all the money associated with that and the substance abuse treatment and all of that, or would you like to just cover the cannabis that helps them directly? So I have a huge running list of things, and this is one of the things on my running list of things to look into.
One more question I have here. Somebody asked, what provisions are made to include family members in the treatment of someone diagnosed with mental health issues?
Are we, and I'm a little confused, are we talking about COVID vaccinations? Or are we talking about, I didn't quite understand the question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll just read it again. What provisions are made to include family members in the treatment of someone diagnosed with mental health issues?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. If you're talking about, is there help out there, whether it be counseling or what have you, for folks, for the loved ones or caretakers of folks with substance abuse issues? That is a very good point. I mean, I don't think that's something that's covered by insurances specifically, but of course, if you have the benefits for counseling and such, you would have that. But I'm not sure exactly what the question means. So unfortunately, it's kind of hard to answer.
Anyone else have any more questions?
Yeah, please feel free. I mean, I know we've been on here for a while. We do have, 14 minutes left if we want to take advantage of it. So does anybody else have any questions, whether it be about COVID, legislation, constituent services, anything like that at all?
Yeah, I have one. I want to go back to the voting issue. I mean, it sounds like you're, probably pretty comfortable with saying that it's not, it doesn't have any case of fraud, but why don't we try to just take a survey in the district and see what the general populace is feeling that? I mean, you're one decision, but the rest of us feel pretty strong about this, and it's just going to be pushed aside as what it sounds like. So how can we get the more input from the area and not just your own?
Yeah, and well, what I would say to that is, I'm not just relying on my own input. I campaigned for well over a year and a half. We knocked on over 10,000 doors in the district. We made over 13,000 phone calls, and I did many of those doors and calls myself. And this is an issue that came up at a lot of doors, and overwhelmingly, we heard support for all of this. I also rely a lot on empirical evidence, and I'm constantly reading, and there is just not the evidence out there that voter fraud is a real threat to American democracy. It's not supported by empirical evidence. It's not supported by anecdotal evidence. It's not supported in terms of having any kind of actual effect on elections. So, I'm not relying just on, what I feel or what I even believe personally. I'm relying on, what I hear from people in the district and across Delaware. And I'm also relying on empirical evidence.
We have another question here. Faith it wants to know if there are differences in each type of vaccine and if there was one that is more recommended than the other.
I don't think so. And I'm not going to pretend to be a doctor, or, you see some people on social media who have suddenly achieved their medical degrees overnight, or their immunologist degrees. I am not one of those folks. Not to my knowledge, and not to anything that I have heard. I mean, I would encourage people, if they want, to go do their own research and such, in terms of what they've determined the efficacy rates to be and all of that. But, I would just say, get the vaccine, get whichever one that you can. I don't think there is any kind of, real difference there.
We have another question about libraries. Gabrielle wants to know when libraries will open up.
Good question. That I do not know. We're just doing this as a wait and see thing. I think a lot of them are doing like drop-offs and things like that. And I'm a huge supporter of libraries. I recently met with, I don't remember the name of it, but it's essentially the Delaware Library Association, because it's about a lot more than books. It's about internet access to a whole lot of folks. It is about college students who can't necessarily afford their books. It is about having meeting spaces for a lot of groups. It's about the wonderful children and adult programming they do there. But to answer your question, I'm really not sure. That would really be at the county level. So the Newcastle County Executive, Matt Meyer, might be able to shed a little more light on that. But I think at this point, it's just kind of a waiting game until, they're comfortable with that.
Representative Morrison.
Yes.
So Newcastle County, we have a plan to start opening our libraries next month. We just have to put the overall plan into place on educating our security guards to make sure that we can maintain the social distancing and the number of visitors that we have to each library. But that is currently in the process, and we do plan to start that next month in April.
Thank you so much. This is why we operate as a team, because none of us.
That's exactly right.
So thank you. That is wonderful news. We absolutely love our libraries.
Yeah.
I did see a question in the chat I definitely want to answer, which was, in terms of the minimum wage. Yes, minimum wage legislation is imminent. I have been on multiple calls lately. I'm one of the co-sponsors of these bills. Right now, there are 3 specific areas. There is, and all of these have been introduced before, by the way, and I support all 3 of them wholeheartedly. The first one is moving Delaware to incrementally to a $15 an hour minimum wage. The second one is increasing the tipped wage. It has been about, I think, 40 years since your servers who work so hard at restaurants have received a raise. Back when I was waiting tables in college, and a year thereafter, I made the same amount in wages per hour that is being made today. And I'm 46 years old, I hate to say. And it's, I think, $2.33 per hour, which is a sin. The third thing is, and some folks may not know this, we had passed a couple of years ago or so in Delaware what was known as the Youth and Training Wage Bill. it actually allows younger people and people who have been on their job for fewer than 90 days to get paid. It's either it's either 50 cents or $1 less per hour than their counterparts who are older, who have been there longer. I think that is repugnant. People should not be getting paid less because of their age when they're doing the exact same work. Also, we know very well that long before the 90 days is up on your job from where you've been there, you're usually doing the same work as anybody who's been there longer. To be frank, a lot of this came from some folks down at the beach, in the beach areas, because of course, there's so much seasonal employment down there. And I used to be seasonal employment down there in my early 20s. And seasonal employment is about 90 days. So guess what? By doing this, they get to pay their employees less than minimum wage for those 90 days. So we've got to get that repealed, and we're going to be working on that.
I don't know, we saw Representative Bomback had in the chat, would you support the county encouraging our county libraries assisting residents, especially seniors and those from community ties of color, to navigate the systems to sign up for the vaccine?
That's one. Paul's going to put me on the spot here. No, Paul, that is a wonderful idea. Absolutely, I would support that. I think that's a great idea, and maybe that's something that we can talk about on one of our many COVID calls. Our libraries serve so many different purposes, and that would be another wonderful purpose that they could serve. Yeah. Yeah. I see that one in the chat, raising the minimum disability wage. That is also another item on my list. Absolutely, we need to raise that. Yes, absolutely. And it is simply unfair, I think loathsome, that we are allowed to pay people with disabilities less than we pay other people without disabilities. And that needs to change. Something else, a couple of other things I've been working on in terms of trying to get the money from the Joint Finance Committee and such. Two things. First of all, the reimbursement rate for Medicaid for our home health aides and our visiting nurses, that reimbursement rate has not been increased since 2006. And especially right now, when we're saying how much we love our nurses and our health workers and how important they are and how much we cherish them, we need to put our money where our mouths are, and we need to raise that rate that has not been raised since 2006. What we also need to do is increase the pay for purchase of care folks in Delaware. So purchase of care, for some of you who may not know, let's say that I have a disabled son who requires care at home. I can, through the state of Delaware, enter the purchase of care program, and I can be paid by the state to stay home and take care of my son. It's good, first of all, because it's so much better to have a family member, a loved one there doing the caretaking. But second of all, it actually saves the state a lot of money. When you're talking about a day program for folks with disabilities, a lot of times running $300 or $400 a day. But right now we are paying our purchase of care providers, those loved ones taking care of their loved ones with disabilities, $10.75 per hour. It's just plain wrong. It's extremely hard work. But the other thing is, it leaves a lot of people in the situation of, I can't live off $10.75 an hour. I really want to stay home and be the one taking care of my son, my daughter, whoever it is, but I can't afford to. So instead, they have to go to work. They should not be put in that position. So that's something else I'm passionate about.
Stevie's asking if the children's programs will be included in the libraries opening back up.
Is Dave still on?
He's here, but he's muted. Nope, there he is.
I'm sorry, I heard something about the library, but exactly what was it?
Will the children's programs be included in the libraries opening back up?
Yes, we will slowly start to bring those back online. Obviously, we have to do it and we've got to do it cautiously. And we're still under, the state of Delaware and governor's executive order. So we have to, abide by, that very cautiously. And ultimately, we also have to apply to the state in order to start the programs and have it approved. So, but yes, we will start to bring those children's programs back online, because I agree with Representative Morrison, and I know Representative Bomback's very passionate about it also, that, the children are our future, and we have to make sure that we provide them now at this very early stage, the services, that they so truly need.
And then we have about 2 minutes left here. We have one more question. Peggy says, do you support a scientific study on the options of an offshore wind project for Delaware? Study to be done by the University of Delaware Special Initiatives on Offshore Wind. Are you aware that the cost of offshore wind per kilowatt hour is now often quite competitive with Delmarva's cost?
So let me answer your question in a larger way. I support absolutely anything that moves us towards renewable energy. I support anything that would prove, that it is not just better for the environment, but that it is cost competitive or even cost less. The science is in, it's not up for debate. We're in a climate crisis. It's very real. Delaware is, I believe, the second lowest lying state in the union. I think we have so much coastline. We have so much to lose when we're talking about rising sea levels, rising, more storms, more severe hurricanes, tornadoes, all of that. We have so much to lose. So I absolutely will advocate for that. I know that one of my representatives, or one of my fellow recently elected representatives, Medina Wilson Anton, is working on legislation, for example, to guarantee in the Constitution of Delaware that a clean environment is a constitutional right. She also has developed a wonderful Green New Deal for Delaware that I look forward to partnering with her on. So yes, anything that will move us in that direction, I very much support. And I know we're out of time, so thank you absolutely everyone. This will be recorded. We will get it out on Facebook. Thank you to the fellow elected officials. Thank you to everybody who came. Thank you to Genevieve for running all this and keeping me calm during those technical issues. And please do not hesitate to reach out to me at any time. Have a great night.
Stay safe and thank you.